Final Fantasy was the last game Square Enix intended to make. Unfortunately for them, it was a huge success. The initial launch was in Japan in 1987, and it was a sizable game, so there was a lot to translate. It wasn't until 1990 that it was finally released in the US, but Europe didn't get the NES release at all until it was available on Wii Virtual Console, many console generations later. The US release was also sold with a massive 84-page manual, with tips and tricks on everything in the game. It was slightly ominous that it was so huge, but it was definitely thorough and aimed to explain everything you might get stuck on. But before we can get stuck anywhere, we should probably start up the game. With the entrancing musical scales in the background, you learn about the task at hand as soon as the game is booted up. You can then choose 4 characters to be your light warriors, with 6 classes to choose from: Fighter, Thief, Black Belt, Black Mage, White Mage, and Red Mage. For the most part, it seems like any combination of the classes could work too, and you can also have more than one of a certain class if you wish. You probably only want one White Mage though. I also love that you can name each of your 4 characters, but you only get 4 letters, or should I say characters again, to name each of them. This time my chat mods had quite an adventure, featuring Fighter Bama, Black Belt Rebel, White Mage Roby, and Black Mage Teeb. The first thing to do, aside from admiring the landscape, is head into town and get some gear for the warriors. Towns also have magic shops for mages to learn spells, as well as item shops for potion to help in numerous ways. Only certain character classes can use certain weapons or wear armor, or use spells, so you'll have to be careful with what you buy. The party only starts with 400 gold, or gil. Final Fantasy really pushed the NES to its limits as a game console, and was ambitious in a lot of ways, but left some things less fully developed. I'm sure there were a lot of things that were intended to be added, but instead we needed the guidebook released with the game, including important information such as who can wield which weapon, or wear their different types of armor. These days, however, it's not so easy to find that manual, and I was playing without it. That involved a fair amount of guesswork with buying everything. What do we need all of this for? Final Fantasy is an RPG in which these light warriors go on a quest to essentially save the world as you might expect, but random battles happen along the way. You learn your first task if you enter the castle next to the first town, which is to rescue Princess Sarah from the evil Garland. The light warriors must take a trek north to Garland's shrine, but will encounter monsters on the way there. These are not monsters to slash a sword at on the overworld like Link would in The Legend of Zelda. Instead, no monsters are visible on the overworld, so you never know when you'll find them. Encounters with monsters take you to a battle screen, mostly in black, but with a background which changes depending on where the battle starts. It uses a bit of a simple system, though many RPGs to this day still function similarly. Each battle has a small chance of letting either the monsters or the light warriors strike first. In most cases, however, the battle starts with a regular turn. At the start of a turn, the player chooses a move for each character, and when something has been selected for all 4, the turn begins. The order of these moves is completely random, which makes it difficult to account for everything that could go wrong. The first battles that you can get into are very simple. Most often it'll be against a small group of imps, which were later retranslated as goblins. It's easy to see how the battles work through these starter encounters, especially with handling groups of enemies. It's also an easy chance to go ahead and level up before trying to take down a bigger enemy, like Garland. The game very methodically shows you text about everything that happens to your party and the enemy party, including all of the damage dealt and any additional effects. Leveling up is no different. You hear all of the individual stats that are leveled up, whether they really matter or not. Each level gained has a chance to increase a random number of HP for each individual character, so that they can last longer in battles. A random number of stats can also be improved per character, including silly things like luck and intelligence. These level ups are achieved from collecting experience points dropped by monsters, with each monster defeated dropping a set amount of gold and experience to be shared equally between the party. So, the game is throwing a lot of information at us during battle scenes, but it's all important, and on the default settings, there's a lot of time to read each event. I did appreciate being able to change the battle speed though, since most of the action is done automatically after you select what you want to happen. After the start of the game, I cranked the speed up to the max and this text zipped by. A significant portion of the game is spent in battles, but let's finally talk about what we're fighting for. We already know that Garland has captured Princess Sarah, so after we can bring her back, the king builds a bridge to cross to the next town, where the journey truly begins. This is very well executed, and when the warriors cross the bridge, you are greeted by a theme that has become the theme of Final Fantasy. Nobuo Uematsu was already off to a great start with the soundtrack in the series. The game cuts to a story interlude, which was just in text boxes for now, but at least it helps to catch us up with the story. This is just the very beginning. The Light Warriors must now defeat the 4 elemental fiends of Earth, Fire, Water, and Air in order to retrieve the 4 elemental orbs. Now the next area is open for you to explore. One thing that I love about this game is the feeling of the scale of the world. You are started on a relatively small landmass, and then cross to a much larger one, but still part of the same continent. After a brief visit to the next town to upgrade battle gear, the Light Warriors then encounter some pirates, making life difficult for the townsfolk. Beating the pirates in battle will win their ship to explore the ocean with, and suddenly many more options have opened up to explore. This makes the discovery of new monsters and battles more exciting too. Crossing the bridge brings some more dangerous battles with it, and even when exploring the ocean on the pirate ship, you can still run into more monsters from the water. It's a huge world to navigate, and we need to find our way around it. In general, there is often enough within the game to work out what to do and where to go next. It's definitely still far from perfect, and it's likely that you'll still get lost several times. But the direction within the game is impressive considering the size of the world. Most other games on the NES that allowed for some exploration completely failed in any kind of direction like this. Unfortunately, it does get a little trickier at around this point in the game. The ocean isn't the easiest place to navigate when all you see is water. You'll find land in many places, but the places to land the ship are very limited. That's okay, you can just search the edges of the world to find where you need to be, as long as you don't mind a few extra battles at sea. Once you get back on land, you'll very quickly see a town and another castle. The directions from here, well, they exist, just scattered around the world a little bit. There are a few different landmarks at this point in the game, and most of them aren't yet needed to make any progress. Progress would be going to the Marsh Cave to retrieve an important item. No, 2 important items. You would have to visit all the other landmarks first to know that, so they're sort of necessary now, but probably shouldn't be. Let's just move on and head into the Marsh Cave for some real progress. But wait a minute, we can't just go here now. All of the monsters are too dangerous to face straight away. So maybe let's go back to town and upgrade some things. All of that battle gear you want to upgrade? That's expensive. Not to give any sort of social commentary, but there's way too much grinding required to improve quality of life. Battles are the main part of the game, but I feel you should naturally get enough money in order to get the sufficient upgrades. You also need to be confident that you're buying things that your characters can use because you don't want to waste that money. At least with buying white magic and black magic, it's a lot easier to figure out who it belongs to, but it also gets a lot more expensive as the game goes on. Fighting monsters for their gold will also, of course, slowly increase the level of the warriors and hopefully increase how much damage they can take. This is also extremely important because things will hurt now, and without good armor and good weapons to fight back with, the party will simply get annihilated. The Marsh Cave's enemies also introduce scary new attacks such as poisoning or even turning you into stone, so we'll need to buy some extra items to deal with that. Luckily, each town's item shops sell potions to heal as well as antidotes and more to cure other status ailments. The downside of this is that you have to buy everything one by one by one by... There is a bit of a wild technique that can be used to make the grind go a little bit faster. This is something that was written about in the US release's large manual, but is still speculated to be a bug or at least some kind of exploit. 2 tiles at the northeasternmost point of the continent will give enemy encounters of much stronger enemies that don't appear anywhere else in the continent. A few of these monsters can be defeated consistently from when the Light Warriors are around level 6, if played correctly. Stronger monsters means that they will give huge boosts in experience and gold every time a battle is won. This area is known as the Peninsula of Power, where monsters from the continent directly above this on the map can be fought early on. I'd recommend using it if you're going to play the NES version of the game, because this is one of the key parts of the game where grinding can be really seen as necessary, and it helps speed it up immensely. Now that we're up to level 8 with several more powerful weapons and spells and stocked up on potions, it's really time to progress. The Marsh Cave isn't actually a key part of the game plot-wise, even though there are key items in there which advance the game. I just view it as a dungeon to show off what enemies can do when it gets tough. This brings up my next point with the pacing of this early game. Grinding aside, there is a long section made up of several fetch quests before we can actually start finding the elemental fiends, which is the main point of the game. All of this eventually leads to finding TNT to give the dwarves the ability to make a canal so that the ship can explore the ocean around the entire world. This definitely didn't need to include a witch's crystal ball or the mystic key. The only thing during this section that I really regard as having any value would be the extra boss fight, Astos. Astos is disguised as the king in the Western Keep, but he has cursed the nearby town and cast an endless sleeping curse over the prince, which adds some character to the town. As a boss fight, Astos is significantly more challenging than Garland. He will very likely use magic that hasn't been seen yet, such as a spell that has a chance to instantly kill a party member, or perhaps cause a more amusing setback such as Lost Intelligence. Oh, by the way, that's an effect that just doesn't work at all, and there are a few functions like that in the game, one of which completely invalidates the Thief class's special ability to run from battles. At this point, it might even sound like I don't like this game, but let me be clear, I genuinely love it, even the NES version. I never grew up with this game, but it was one of my first true RPG experiences, and after this long fetch quest beginning, I don't have nearly as much to complain about. The story isn't really what kept me playing, but I'll give it credit for being more developed than plots of other games of the era. It's more about where the story brought me. I've talked about the scale, and when the fetch quests are finally over and the dwarves have their TNT, you can now sail the ship all around the world and see the different environments. I love how every single town feels different to the others. A lot of the game's guidance isn't too bad at this point either, so you can often find your way around using the hints in-game. I really enjoyed the environments that the elemental fiends were hiding in. The Earth Cave, Gurgu Volcano, the Sea Shrine, and the Floating Fortress. Each area includes specific enemies which gradually get more dangerous, but I was actually impressed that during these sections leveling up happened much more naturally to help with this. The Ice Cave also exists, but not because of a fiend. I could do without it existing because all of the crazy things enemies can do to you in there. In between some of these sections, there are also new modes of transport obtained. The canoe can explore shallower waters, which is necessary to reach certain landmarks, but the bigger addition is the airship. Finding the airship isn't very easy, which is unfortunate as it's required, but once you have it, you can zoom around the whole world and land almost anywhere. The airship also gives access to a quest that isn't necessary to complete the game, but undoubtedly helps with the flow of it. The Dragon King Bahamut offers great power if the Light Warriors can bring back a rat tail. This specific rat tail is located in the Castle of Ordeals, and wow is it ever an ordeal. The airship can't be landed very close to the castle because of all the tree coverage, and the area inside and outside of the castle is filled with vicious monsters. It's a thrilling adventure, and it concludes with each warrior's class being upgraded, and they appear as more grown up. I miss the old look for Teeb, but as described by the person he was named after, he's still squishy. He'll get a big HP upgrade with a level up eventually. When all 4 elemental fiends have been defeated and the elemental orbs are obtained, well, where else to go but back to Garland's shrine at the start? Except first, I've got some bad news. You're way too weak, trust me. Oh, and I hope you thought to talk to Princess Sarah after you rescued her, because she's carrying a necessary item. I'd imagine most people would want to see what she says, but I somehow forgot to talk to her. After a very long grind past level 30, entering the shrine will cause a time warp from the power of the orbs. Yeah, we're dealing with that for the grand finale. It turns out that Garland's hatred actually created the 4 fiends 2,000 years ago, and this time warp takes the heroes 2,000 years into the past. They are now trapped inside a huge temple and encounter their toughest battles yet, including meeting all 4 fiends once again, and they're all significantly stronger than before. Defeating them sends them into the future, which supposedly allows Garland to live forever, also explaining why he was so weak at the beginning of the game. Too bad he's the final boss, and defeating him 2,000 years in the past will seal the loop forever instead. There's not too much to comment on about the final battle with him. He transforms into chaos, and he's huge, which looks pretty epic, but he probably isn't the hardest monster to fight in that temple. The same battle song is also used throughout the whole game, so that's especially unfortunate here. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a mediocre ending though, because of the satisfaction you get from watching him crumble after being defeated. We get a rather long ending scene once again, all explained in text, with a wonderful new song playing for the end of the game. The music of this game is fantastic, there just needed to be more of it. The grinding and all of the broken features are also quite unfortunate, but I still love this game, and honestly, I'm not quite sure why. Playing can be a mindless activity throughout a lot of the game, but I guess I enjoy that about it, as well as the contrast with the scares that you can get from many fights. So, even with these flaws, it's a huge technical accomplishment that essentially revived a company. Therefore, my final score for Final Fantasy will be 7.7 out of 10. If you're already not an RPG fan, Final Fantasy isn't going to be the one that changes your mind. But seeing the roots of the series, and almost the roots of the genre, was very fun for me. This game saw several complete remakes, not just re-releases but full rebuilds for different consoles. Some of these add new content, but the common goal was to fix everything that was broken, so we could see what the game was meant to be. Significant remakes include for the GBA and PSP, and most recently the Pixel remaster released to PC and other modern consoles. I have played this remaster and it's okay. You can run now, that's nice. The walk speed on the NES was quite slow, and could get tedious. But something about this remaster felt a little more tedious than the original, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Chaos at the end is also significantly harder, and has its own battle theme. If you want to play this game, the general opinion is that you should play one of these remakes, but I would tell you not to count out the original. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Final Fantasy for the NES, initially released in 1987? As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self. Get him, Teep!
Yes. Finally.
Go Teep!
Yeah. Teep, Teep,
This is so
Teep,
sad.
Teep, 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 Teep. Oh. Teep!
Oh, let's go Teep!
Yes.
Huh. Well,